Every so often, a film slips into theaters with barely a whisper, no wide campaign, no studio spotlight, just a quiet debut under the glow of a few dim marquees. But rarer still is the moment when a movie enters those same theaters, only to vanish almost immediately, erased from showtimes without warning, explanation, or even a trace of public acknowledgement. These disappearances aren't accidents. They aren't scheduling mistakes. They are calculated removals, silent extractions from the exhibition landscape, as if someone decided the film should not be seen. At least not there. Not then. Across decades of action cinema, a strange pattern has emerged. Titles that premiere on Friday and are gone before word of mouth can even start. Films that receive no statement from the studio, no formal recall, no scandal to pin the blame on only a sudden absence. Theater managers shrug. Distributors say nothing. And audiences, if they even knew the movie existed, are left with questions the industry refuses to answer. Why pull a film that's already paid for its screens? Who benefits from burying a release that's technically finished? And what kind of chaos must happen behind closed doors to justify erasing a movie that cost millions to produce? Tonight, we open a file Hollywood never wanted you to read, one filled with abandoned premieres, sabotaged rollouts, and titles that were wiped clean from theater schedules before they ever had a chance to breathe. These aren't lost films. They were completed, printed, shipped, and projected. Yet their theatrical lives were cut short, often within hours, sometimes within days. Some were victims of internal politics, others casualties of distribution wars, and a few, well, the reasons behind their disappearance may never be fully known. This is the story of action movies that didn't just fail, they were pulled, suddenly and quietly, leaving behind nothing but rumors, speculation, and a handful of confused viewers who just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Fact 1. Liberty and Bash, 1989. When Liberty and Bash briefly appeared in select theaters in 1989, most audiences never even realized it happened. The film had a troubled birth. Inconsistent rewrites, last-minute reshoots, and a studio unsure of how to market it. But even with all that chaos, its disappearance from theaters was unusually abrupt. Exhibitors reported receiving the film cans, scheduling them for a standard week-long run, and then within days being instructed to pull the title without any formal explanation. No press announcement, no memo, nothing. Insiders later hinted that the studio was embarrassed by the final cut and wanted to redirect attention toward more profitable projects. Others believed the filmmakers clashed with distributors over profit participation, resulting in the movie quietly being removed to avoid contractual obligations. That silence only deepened the mystery. The handful of people who actually saw it during its microscopic theatrical window often speak of the experience like a ghost event, something that technically happened but feels almost imaginary today. Fact 2. Chain of Command 1994. For a Michael Dudikoff action film in the mid-90 seconds to suddenly vanish from theaters was almost unheard of. Chain of Command had a respectable fan base waiting from the actor's previous hits, yet the movie's theatrical run evaporated almost instantly. Posters arrived late, trailers barely played, and in some cities, the film appeared on listings for 1 or 2 days before being abruptly replaced by other titles. Theater managers claimed the distributor issued an unexpected recall, but no official reasoning was ever made public. Rumors circulated that disputes between the international rights holders and the American distributor escalated at the exact moment the film reached theaters. Rather than continue paying for screens while fighting behind the scenes, the studio allegedly decided to pull the movie and shift all promotion toward the home video market, where profit margins were higher and scrutiny was lower. That sudden disappearance transformed the film into an odd artifact, one that technically premiered in theaters, but never truly existed there in any meaningful way. Fact 3. Steel Justice. Omyanoasute obsechi shishapta. Steel Justice was positioned as the next gritty revenge vehicle of the late 80 seconds, complete with a stylized poster and a modest marketing plan. But after premiering in a handful of theaters, something strange happened. The movie simply evaporated. Its box office numbers were so low they barely registered on industry reports, and most regions never saw the film reach its full planned rollout. Insiders claim the studio panicked after disastrous test screenings and feared a wider release would embarrass the slate of upcoming movies they were trying to protect. Another theory points to internal studio restructuring. Executives were fired, distribution budgets were frozen, and smaller films, especially mid-tier action titles, were sacrificed first. Steel justice became collateral damage, pulled from theaters quietly so the company could cut losses without attracting attention. As a result, the film slipped into obscurity almost instantly. Remembered mostly by genre collectors who still wonder why its theatrical life was cut before it even had a chance. Fact 4. Stickfighter, 1904, 900. Stickfighter had one of the strangest theatrical appearances of any low-budget 90 seconds action film. It quietly slipped into a few regional theaters with almost no promotional push, no TV spots, no trailers attached to major releases, not even proper lobby standees. Then, just as quietly, the movie disappeared. Some theaters reported that the film never made it past its opening weekend, while others claimed it was removed within 48 hours. No official statement was ever released. Industry whispers suggested the distributor panicked when they realized the film's master print quality varied between reels, leading to complaints during early screenings. Others believed the studio had already arranged a lucrative deal with the VHS market and decided that a theatrical run, however limited, was unnecessary and potentially harmful if critics noticed its flaws. In the end, Stickfighter became a near myth, a film that technically debuted in theaters but was seen by so few people that its run might as well have never happened. Fact 5. The Base, 1999. When The Base briefly hit theaters in 1999, it seemed like another routine military action title destined for a modest release. But something unusual happened almost immediately. Theaters began receiving notices, quiet, direct, and without explanation, telling them to pull the film from their schedules. Showtimes vanished overnight. Some locations hadn't even sold a single ticket yet. Rumors behind the scenes pointed to a legal dispute involving the rights to the film's underlying story, with whispers that someone threatened to block distribution unless the movie was removed. Others speculated that the studio saw the film's early box office numbers and decided it was cheaper to cut the release short than continue paying booking fees. After its disappearance, The Base resurfaced almost instantly in the home video market, reinforcing the belief that its theatrical run was never meant to succeed, only to fulfill a brief contractual obligation before being buried. Fact 6. Diplomatic Siege, 1999. Diplomatic Siege, starring Peter Weller and Daryl Hannah, had the star power for a proper late 90 seconds action rollout. But the film's theatrical appearance was shockingly brief. Some regions reported it screened for only a single weekend before being replaced. In others, showtimes were listed, but the film never actually played, an indication that exhibitors were instructed to pull it even before audiences had a chance to see it. Behind closed doors, distribution insiders pointed to severe disagreements over the film's final cut. Producers allegedly delivered a version the studio deemed unmarketable, threatening to pull support if changes weren't made. When neither side budged, the film's release became collateral damage. Rather than pour more money into a title caught in creative conflict, the studio chose to withdraw it from theaters without public explanation. The result was a film that technically premiered, yet reached almost no one, another casualty of Hollywood politics executed in total silence. Fact 7. Detention, 2003. Detention, starring Dolph Lundgren, was intended to revive the early 2000s wave of school siege action films. It even secured a small theatrical rollout in select markets, but what happened next was anything but normal. Several theaters reported that the film was pulled mid-week, before even reaching the customary Friday-Thursday cycle. No memo, no damage report, no public explanation. The title just disappeared from marquees as if it had never been scheduled. Insiders later hinted that test screenings had produced alarmingly low audience reaction scores. But instead of delaying the release or revising the cut, the distributor appeared to abandon the film entirely, shifting focus toward its international DVD sales, where Lundgren's name still carried significant weight. Some believe the studio simply used the theatrical release as a contractual technicality required for overseas licensing, then shut it down the moment those boxes were checked. The result was a phantom release that only a tiny number of moviegoers even had the chance to witness. Fact 8. Deadly Prey, 1987. Deadly Prey is famous today as a cult classic, but its theatrical history is shrouded in confusion. The film technically premiered in a limited number of regional theaters, but nearly all of those showings were cut short. Local newspapers listed the film for 1 week. By midweek, it was gone. Some theater managers later admitted that they were told to pull the film, but were never given a justification. Others claimed the prints arrived late or in poor condition, making further screenings impossible. Behind the scenes, there were whispers that the distributor couldn't afford the booked screens and panicked when early attendance numbers came in far lower than projected. Another theory suggested the production company faced sudden financial trouble and pulled the film before costs spiraled further. Whatever the truth, Deadly Prey became one of those rare action films that technically played in theaters, yet almost no one actually saw during its original run. Fact 9. American Ninja V. 1993. As the successor to a well-known action franchise, American Ninja V should have enjoyed at least a predictable limited release. Instead, it became one of the franchise's strangest entries, released, pulled, and then seemingly forgotten. In some territories, the movie appeared for a single day before being replaced by unrelated titles. In others, it was scheduled but never shown, despite posters already being delivered. Many fans suspected trouble when rumors spread that the film was never intended to be part of the American Ninja series at all. It was reportedly rebranded late in production to capitalize on the franchise name. This abrupt change may have caused licensing conflicts between the rights holders and the theatrical distributor, forcing the film to be withdrawn until paperwork could be sorted or deliberately shelved to avoid a dispute altogether. After the Vanishing Act, the movie was dumped straight to video, where it quietly lived out the remainder of its life, leaving behind one of the franchise's most mysterious distribution stories. Fact 10. Rapid Fire, 1992. Although Rapid Fire eventually became a cult favorite thanks to Brandon Lee's rising stardom, its initial theatrical handling in certain regions was bizarrely inconsistent. Some theaters received the film, scheduled it for a standard run, and then without any studio communication were told to replace it prematurely. Managers described the recall as abrupt and unusual, especially for a film tied to a promising young action star. Industry observers suggested the issue stemmed from internal uncertainty following the tragic events surrounding Lee's career. Studios were hesitant about promotional strategies and nervous about releasing anything that might be overshadowed by controversy. Meanwhile, others speculated that disputes over the film's international distribution rights created friction, leading certain territories to pull the movie before the situation became legally complicated. Whatever the real reason, Rapid Fire experienced pockets of theatrical disappearances that remain unexplained to this day. Fact 11. Extreme Justice, 1993. Extreme Justice, starring Lou Diamond Phillips and Scott Glenn, was poised to be a gritty neo-noir action thriller fit for early 90-seconds audiences. Yet upon release, the film's theatrical life was almost immediately cut off. Several theaters reportedly listed the movie but never screened it, suggesting it was pulled before prints were even delivered, while others showcased it briefly before being told to remove it from rotation entirely. Behind the scenes, sources claimed the studio grew uneasy with the film's political themes, which involved corrupt police units and internal cover-ups. With real-world controversies dominating headlines, there were fears the film might attract unwanted backlash. Rather than risk PR complications, the studio seems to have chosen the quietest solution, retracting the release without acknowledging the decision publicly. The movie was then quickly rerouted to cable and home video, where it found a small audience far removed from the theatrical spotlight it almost had. Fact 12. Martial Outlaw 1993. Featuring Jeff Wincott at the height of his martial arts popularity, Martial Outlaw should have enjoyed a straightforward limited release aimed at genre fans. Instead, its theatrical presence evaporated almost instantly. While some theaters reported playing it for a handful of low-attendance showings, others received last-minute instructions not to screen it at all, despite promotional materials already arriving on site. Rumors behind the scenes pointed to budgetary chaos within the distribution company, which was allegedly unable to pay for the film's booked screens. Another theory suggested that the producers, unhappy with the final sound mix and pacing, wanted to re-edit the film, but were blocked by distribution deadlines, resulting in a compromise where the movie was pulled with minimal explanation. The Vanishing Act relegated Martial Outlaw to a quiet home video release, where its theatrical story became something of an urban legend among action collectors. Fact 13. Hollow Point 1996. With a cast that included Thomas Ian Griffith and Donald Sutherland, Hollow Point should have had the momentum for a proper mid-90 seconds action rollout. Instead, its theatrical presence flickered out almost as soon as it appeared. Some theaters screened it for a single weekend. Others listed the showtimes only to replace them hours later. No public recall was issued, no studio comment made, and exhibitors were left guessing. Industry chatter later pointed toward financial instability within the film's distributor, which was allegedly struggling to meet obligations for multiple simultaneous releases. When budgets tightened, Hollow Point, a mid-tier action title with modest marketing, became an easy target for silent removal. Another rumor suggested that competing studios pressured exhibitors to free up screens for their higher-profile titles, pushing Hollow Point out without formal negotiations. Whatever the cause, the film's abrupt disappearance turned it into one of the decade's more puzzling theatrical casualties. Fact 14. U.S. Seals, 2000. U.S. Seals entered the new millennium with hopes of leveraging the popularity of military-themed action films. While its video market prospects were strong, the attempt at a theatrical preview run was shockingly brief. In multiple regions, the film was shown only once or twice before theaters were instructed to discontinue screenings. Local managers were given no reason, and early audiences found themselves watching a movie that vanished from listings by the time they left the building. Speculation centered on a dispute regarding the ownership of certain action sequences, which were rumored to resemble footage licensed from another international production. Whether the issue was legal or simply fear of backlash, the distributor seemed eager to halt the theatrical rollout before unwanted attention arrived. The sudden withdrawal ensured that U.S. Seals would live primarily as a home video title, with only a trace of evidence that it ever touched theaters at all. Fact 15. The Silencers, 1996. The Silencers was marketed as a fast-paced alien conspiracy action film, the kind of genre blend that could have found a cult audience if handled correctly. Instead, its theatrical release became a blink-and-you-miss-it event. Reports from the time indicate that the movie was pulled so quickly that some theaters never even opened the film cans before receiving instructions to return them. Showtimes were deleted mid-week, and critics weren't given an opportunity to screen it. Whispers from within the production suggested creative clashes between the director and studio executives, particularly regarding the film's tone action or sci-fi, serious, or camp. As disagreements intensified, the studio allegedly decided not to support a theatrical rollout they no longer believed in. The fastest solution was the quietest one. Erase the film's presence from theaters and move it straight to video, where expectations were lower and consequences minimal. The result was a release so short-lived that many fans assumed it never reached theaters at all. Bonus fact: Executive Decision 1996. While Executive Decision is remembered today as a mainstream studio release with a solid cast and respectable box office numbers, few people know about the bizarre incident surrounding its initial theatrical rollout in select regions. In several early preview markets, the film premiered on a Friday, only to be abruptly pulled within 24 hours. Audiences who attended those rare early screenings became part of a tiny group who witnessed a version of the movie that almost disappeared completely. According to theater managers at the time, the recall order arrived suddenly, and with no clarification, only a directive to hold all further showings until notified. That notification never came. Instead, prints were replaced days later by a slightly altered version, fueling speculation that the studio had panicked over a last-minute continuity issue or an internal disagreement about the portrayal of certain military protocols. Some whispered that a particular sequence had drawn unwanted attention from government consultants, prompting the studio to quietly re-edit before the nationwide release. Others believed the reason was far more mundane, a flaw in the audio master that affected a batch of early distributed prints. But the absence of an official explanation created a shadow over those preview screenings, transforming them into fragments of a theatrical run that almost didn't happen. The movie ultimately succeeded, but its near-invisible, quickly retracted debut in certain markets remains one of those strange, undocumented anomalies Hollywood would prefer to leave unmentioned. If you've made it this far, you now know the stories Hollywood never wanted on the record, films that entered theaters only to be erased before anyone could ask why. And these 15 cases are just a fraction of the releases that slipped through the cracks, buried by studio politics, legal battles, or decisions made in dark rooms far from the public eye. If this kind of hidden history fascinates you, then stay with us, because there are still countless action movies, forgotten premieres, vanished cuts, and abandoned projects waiting to be uncovered. Which of these films surprised you the most? And which mystery should we open next? Tell us in the comments, and we'll keep digging.